Hello, everyone. I'm Denny Miller, and welcome to Indy 500 Yesteryear and Today with Speedway Insiders Paul Page and Bob Gates.
Hello.
And I'm wearing something from Toddy Ruttman today, the Troy Ruttman 70th anniversary T-shirt that she may still have some on. I'll adjust this a little better now. But today we are going to be talking a little bit about Troy Ruttman, and we have the author of the book of Troy Ruttman, Mr. Gates. You want to hold that up, Bob? And
I'll try to. I don't know how it might come across. There's part of it anyway.
Oh, disappeared.
Yeah, it gets it's kind of like a green screen. There we go. There's part
California Gold. It's about Troy Ruttman, and so we will be talking about him. And will you be able to tell how, if people want to get this shirt, where they can get it, Bob?
Yeah,
you're closer to Toddy than I am, so
easiest thing to do is just contact her on Facebook.
Okay,
she's on Facebook.
It's really a sharp shirt how they did this. And by the way, who's this show dedicated to? Our buddy Robin Miller, as always. And Robin would always wear some sort of Bobby Unser shirt or Novak shirt or Vukovich shirt or something. And did he ever own a tuxedo or a suit or something like that? I don't think he really always lived a life of being totally comfortable whatever he wore. But Robin,
wait a minute. Are we talking Bobby or are we talking Robin?
Well, I guess that's flip of the coin, isn't it?
Okay.
But anyway, Robin, I stole your idea here, where you would wear those kind of shirts. And Toddy, it's a really sharp looking shirt. I'm glad you were able to get me one. And we will get into Ruttman a little bit later, Bob, but we want to talk about some of the main things. And there's kind of a sad story, particularly because I live in Redondo Beach, California now. The death of a very talented race car driver, Bobby East Jr., got stabbed this past week and succumbed from injuries on that. He was getting gasoline at a Westminster gasoline station when this person who was out violating parole came up and stabbed him to death and getting gas gun.
That's just horrible.
There's a lot of people in California that are, I don't know, damn pissed is good enough descriptive adjective or something, that they are releasing murderers and convicts and stuff left and right, and it's not a pleasant scene here. I don't know if that's going on in the rest of the country, but it is here. And this is a byproduct of what happened on this. I know you were close to both Bobby and his dad. Bob, you want to comment a little bit about Bobby?
Yeah, I've known Bobby since he was a kid, running around with his mom and dad at the track. And his dad, of course, Bobby's, was a driver, but gained much renown by building race cars, primarily race cars for the USAC series, midget sprint cars, championship cars, the dirt cars, under the title Beast. And there was a time when if you wanted to win a race, you needed to have a beast. And so I've known them for quite a while. Very good people. I have not talked to Bob or Janice since this happened, but I know it's just devastating to them. They were a very close family. There was a daughter as well as a son, Bobby. And so they were always very close, always closely tied to racing. So it's just very tragic.
And then a national midget champion and a two-time Silver Crown champion.
Yes.
And I believe at one time he was the youngest driver to win a USAC feature at age 16. I don't know if that record still stands, but he was good at a very young age. Paul, how well do you remember Bobby East and his dad?
More his dad, but kind of at a distance because why I would attend things like the midgets and the sprint cars and certainly Silver Crown, but I never was like into that. Like I guess that's saying I never got like a really good pit pass or anything, so I didn't follow it. I didn't get any pit passes, actually, was the answer, but I didn't follow it as closely. And I've always been so immersed in Indy. But now I was out at Putnamville a week ago and I was like, you really need to come back to this stuff because it matters.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a terrible damn thing.
It is.
Terrible. And who knows where that would have gone.
Right.
You know, he had the pedigree that it's surprising that he did not run successfully at Indy. When you look at people like Jason Leffler and drivers like that, but never made it. So I guess that's the Indy 500 loss. But I always put Bobby East as a Indy 500 driver type caliber driver and everything. And it's certainly a loss on that. But that's a nice segue to what happened in the SRX series. Mr. Stewart won again. And,
what a surprise.
Yes.
Is that Jim Neighbors? We can quote from him. Surprise. But you know, the big surprise to me is how well Marco Andretti is doing. I don't think that he ever drive on the dirt before in his life until this.
Didn't he drive? He wasn't in the series last year, was he?
No, that I don't know. I mean, I think he was maybe, but I mean,
so he would have. Yeah,
but
that's right.
He never had his pedigree. Certainly never was on the dirt.
Right. Yeah.
I assume he must be having fun because he's leading the series now ahead of Ryan Newman and Tony Stewart going in the last race. For those who want to know the results of this, Stewart was first, Marco was second, Kenny Schrader was third, Ryan Newman fourth, Greg Biffle fifth, Ernie Francis sixth, Michael Waltrip seventh, Paul Tracy, not Paul Page, Paul Tracy eighth, Haley Diggin ninth, Tony Kanaan 10th, Bobby Labonte 11th, Matt Kenseth 12th, and Ryan Hunter-Ray 13th. And I guess next week on the season finale at Sharon Speedway at Hartford, Ohio, both Blaney's will be running, Dave and Ryan Blaney. So that'll be a packed house on that too.
Well, Tony Stewart had a big weekend. Of course, Tony Stewart's wife won, and I forget her name, Mrs. Stewart, won the top fuel division at NHRA drags over the weekend.
You ever see Tony wanting to run that at that level?
Well, I think he qualified.
I know he's played around with that, but I mean,
I think he qualified to run and get a license, whatever you have to do. Paul knows a little more about drag racing than I do, but I think he's could if he wanted to.
The gal is she's great. She was just starting when I was doing NHRA, Leah Pruitt, and she's a remarkable woman. I mean, she's bright, and I can see why Tony thought that might be a good wife.
Yeah,
he's pretty spectacular. Now let's get Tony in a top fuel. Yeah. No.
Didn't he qualify to run, Paul, or whatever you have to do?
I think he did what they call a half pass there.
Yeah.
And you have to do, I forget how many of them, but to actually qualify for the big leagues. And you also, one of the interesting things is a requirement on exiting the car, and they time you on it. And so they're pretty good at restricting who can actually get into the nitro categories.
I see.
Mm-hmm. So
it'd be interesting to see Tony try it, though. He's been successful and everything
out of
else.
the car fast enough, or what? So but I think his series is great. That would really be a shot of nitro in NHRA's series if Tony Stewart started running it.
Let me tell you a story. I don't know what Leah did with him, but what all of us would do whenever we had the chance. When they shut down, they shut down like a half an hour before the top fuel and funny cars came up. And if you had a guest or a friend, you'd get the credentials so you could take them out onto the starting line, right there in between the two cars.
Wow.
And if this is a guy who's never been to I did this at Bristol once. It's more fun. Never been to any kind of drag race. And of course, when you got two top fuel dragsters on either side of you and they fire up, you can see his eyes, their eyes, just, and then when they launch, because that's a physical thing.
Yeah.
It's always fun to do that.
That's always been on my bucket list to be able to do that.
You got to do it. You got to do
Yeah.
it. Maybe we can figure it out for the U.S. Nationals.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Well, I'm sure we'll comment on that. I've never been to a drag race before. What's considered a bigger deal? Top fuel or funny car?
I see them as pretty much equal. Supposedly, because of its history, top fuel is the thing. Funny car came along much after top fuel existed, but top fuel, you might talk me into a top fuel dragster for a half fast. I would never I don't even like standing near funny cars. They just look like they are trouble.
Yes.
What's Kenny Bernstein doing these days?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah.
Making money, I'm sure.
I used to love it when he had his cars at the Indy 500.
Yeah.
And with who was it? Guerrero, Roberto ran for Kenny Bernstein. I think Jim Crawford as well. It was always exciting. Wouldn't that be neat if Kenny Bernstein comes back? Kenny, come on back, come back and be part of the Indy 500 with.
Kenny probably owns an island somewhere.
Probably.
He doesn't need us.
So just as long as he still comes back, he's, I'm sure, always welcome and everything. So we had some excitement brewing in IndyCar with the defending champion, Alex Palou, and a tug of war between Chip Ganassi and McLaren over his services for 2023. Is that a nice way of saying that, tug of war?
And that's not bad.
I don't, typically Chip Ganassi does not lose those kind of encounters. That's the equivalent of wrestling to being Dick the Bruiser type.
Well, Zach Brown often gets what he wants too.
I know.
Yeah.
So
two Titans going at it.
To talk about two alpha dogs.
Yeah.
So for those who really don't know, and I'll let you two chime in, but basically our defending champion, Alex Palou, who by the way is now moved up, even this and he makes it more dramatic, now into third place in the point standings, is supposedly signed or the option with Ganassi for next year. Yet on the flip side, he apparently is signed with McLaren to run for next year, which the bright, shiny trinket, no doubt, would be an option to run F1 too. And the powerhouse that Zach Brown has accumulated with the Padua Award, Alexander Rossi, and if indeed it is Alex Palou, that's things haven't been that way since Andretti, Al Unser, and Joe Leonard and Parnelli Super Team, I believe. Roger Penske might not agree with that, but that is definitely a big deal. And then you have that Rosenquist factor, which looks more and more he's going to be their Formula E person, whether he wants to be or not.
I hope not. I like his run in the Indy cars.
Right.
He could be just as
And
spectacular.
we'll be talking about that, but let's get a take on how, Paul, you see, and then Bob, how you see what's transpired and how it's going to work its way through, and better yet, how is that going to affect the team if he indeed does go with McLaren? How is that going to affect their desire to have him capture another championship? That tug of war between wanting to win and, well, screw you kind of a type of thing. So Paul, we'll start with you.
The first thing, I have never seen something like that really, I don't think I've ever seen something like that. And it all went down within like 7 or 8 minutes, the series of announcements. I was like, what? Wow, here's another one. What? Now their drivers all have managers and everything. So, and often in that kind of situation, the driver is a little more slave to the manager than they probably would want to be. And, it's not uncommon for a manager in any field, as you know, Denny, to go a little out on his own on behalf of his client and then call him back later and say, guess what, I got you. Well, I cannot see this. We're going to see some lawsuits unless they both get drunk. Zach and Chip get drunk and go back in a room and figure it out. I was totally shocked by it. I was totally shocked that kind of thing gets public. Yeah. There are those kind of wars, but yeah, but now, we're journalists. I love it. It's a story.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Bob, what are you hearing?
Well, Paul saying he loved it remind me really of what Will Power said. They talked to Will Power some about it, and he likes it. He thinks it's good for the series, getting that kind of publicity and that kind of talk. So I think there's some positives in that as well. As far as him winning Palou winning the championship and winning more, I mean, that's what they're in business for. I don't care who the driver is. Chip Ganassi is going to be happy if one of his drivers wins the championship. Doesn't matter if it is Palou or every time one of his drivers wins a race. Chip Ganassi is going to be happy. That's what he's doing this for. Yeah. And I believe I like what Palou said over the weekend when he was asked some similar questions about, how this is going to affect his season. He said, it's not. He said, I'm a warrior and I'm going out to win races, period.
Paid to win.
That's the end of it. As far as distractions, there was a guy I talked to that's familiar with members of the team, Palou's team, and they kind of all congratulated Alex, hey, man, that's pretty cool. Looks like a step up for Palou. Of course, they would hate the losing, but I don't think it's a huge distraction for them necessarily. It's not like it's Palou against the rest of them now. Yeah. And Paul and I both spent some time with Kurt Cavan today. Mm-hmm. And one thing, and I'm not sure if Paul caught it, one thing that Kurt thought might happen is Palou might not drive at all next year.
It could end up being that. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's right.
In other words, Ganassi exercises the option that he has with Palou. Hey, you're under contract with me. If you don't want to drive with me, fine, set out. Something along those lines. So it's very interesting to see how and fascinating, really, how it might work out over the next several weeks. And certainly a lot of buzz, on both sides of the pond, as they say.
Yeah. If it happened, and I have reason to believe it did, I think Ganassi sent out looking for Ryan Hunter-Reay's seat.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah. Well, there you go. So
there's the game has begun.
Exactly. And as far as Zach Brown and McLaren, when you look at what Zach Brown's doing, he's got drivers now that he can move like chess pieces. Right. Well, you're going to run electric. You're going to run the sports car stuff. You're going to run IndyCar, or who knows, he might mix and match. Yeah. You're going to test Formula One. So,
and indirectly, he kind of has Herta too.
Yeah, he has Herta. Yeah.
Which we should, I guess, say that Colton Herta had a very successful run in the test car, the year-old car and everything.
Right.
And selfishly for IndyCar, I hope they don't lose any of those four.
Well, I hate to see any of those guys, us lose any of those guys. Yeah. But the idea that they're being talked about and IndyCar talked about on an international level it's nothing but good for the sport.
Also, if like Paddle Award and that that whole group. Anything that happens, I don't see any of them in Formula One, should they go there, until after 2023.
Yeah,
I just think it's too complex otherwise.
right. No, I agree. They
Do you-
might get some seat time like Colton did,
Yeah.
you know,
I think on television, Colton alluded to it, I'm gonna be here 2023. I forget
Yeah,
how he
he
said
did.
it, but it was there.
yeah, I caught that myself, Paul.
Well, I hope both of you, when you speak to him, push the narrative that he considers doing what Mario did and put it in his contract that he gets to run Indy. And I know, but he's not going to get it unless he asks for it.
I'm not sure that works in today's world.
No,
But it would work if he's running for Andretti race team in F1, if Michael gets an F1 team.
It's Formula One has become, so intrigued with contracts and with the financial side of it. Hence Andretti, it's impossible for him to come in as a new team. That just can't happen.
right.
But I don't see anybody just suddenly ending up in a Formula One car like that. It's going to be a process
Mhm.
if it happens at all.
Yeah, I agree.
So if indeed, well, I would imagine if the thought of Palou sitting out a year, Penske will have all parties in the back room. And
That could be.
will be, and Penske could pull it off more than anyone else could pull it off.
Yeah,
Sure.
there could be a conversation. And
Yeah.
yes, he can. He's the only guy that can do that.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
Maybe you remember back in 1947 when they had the Aspar strike.
Oh, yeah.
Bill Fox of the Indianapolis News came in and averted he was kind of the mediator on it. Maybe the distinguished Hall of Fame Paul Page will be the mediator to resolve this.
Oh, no.
difficult and everything. Let's push that narrative, Bob. What do you think on that?
No.
I don't think I'd want to be between Zach Brown and Chip Ganassi
No.
in a closed room.
You remember that strike though, the final line, I think, on it, if I have this one right, was when the drivers were just told the race is going to start 11 o'clock, and if you want to be in it, otherwise,
Yeah.
see ya.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
Tony just put his foot down.
There was one back in 1933, I believe it was, when
Howdy, Will.
right, yeah, it was Howdy Wilcox the second wasn't able to start Indy because of a supposed diabetic condition.
Right.
Drivers were going to strike, and Rickenbacker says, it's going to be starting in 10 minutes. And if no one does, I'll get in the car and drive the 500 miles myself, and I'll padlock the track, and we'll never have another race here.
Yeah.
Guess what happened? They ran the race. And
They figured it out.
There you go.
But so if indeed they do lose Palou, who's the shiny trinket now? I think he qualified 5th at Toronto. Is going to be the guy that is going to be on everyone's radar. David Malukas, 20-year-old.
Oh,
He's great.
Malukas.
Yeah, Malukas.
Yeah.
He's now really outshining Kyle Kirkwood. Kirkwood's kind of, his brand is slightly suffering with his various encounters with other people. And I think Kirkwood's going to be outstanding too.
If he get a little more consistent, I could see VK coming in there.
VK.
I do too. I think VK is their first pick if Ganassi will go after it. I just hit me now. Ganassi might make a run after Rosenquist just the touche backwards and everything.
I bet after all this, all those contracts are going to be locked up tight after this situation.
The Gene Autry days of a handshake don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Sure. But, talking about Malukas, the two others, it was really good. You had both Kalamayat, I think he qualified 7th, and Lundgaard, Christian Lundgaard was 10th. So 3 in the top 10 again, which is amazing.
Yeah.
On that. And well, after what happened at Indy, and potential, will he ever win again? Starting to creep in. It was a neat weekend for Scott Dixon.
Yeah.
Up there, and it was a great crowd. Toronto fans seemed to be thrilled. The racing again. Scott Dixon won his fourth Toronto race, and it was somewhat convincingly. He qualified second. Colton Herta was on the pole, and really it's kind of unchallenged. What's your take on it, Bob and Paul? His Dixon's win.
Well, I mean, for one thing, it's historic. He tied Mario Andretti.
Yeah, there you go.
For 56 wins, and that's big news in itself. It's just a shame that part of it's his personality, part of it is the way IndyCar is received today. He just doesn't get the recognition that he should. Scott Dixon doesn't. But he's just an amazing talent, and I think we saw that again Sunday. That young kid, aggressive driver, and Colton Herta, as good as he is, he couldn't catch him. And so it says something about Scott. I think it's 18 consecutive years now that he's won at least one race. And I believe I heard yesterday 20 years total that he's won it, or 20 seasons total that he's won at least one race, and 18 of those consecutively. So it's amazing, an amazing record, really.
What's your take of his win, Paul?
Oh, I was just so happy. He looked so happy and relieved. That monkey's now off of his back, and I think that and the Indianapolis 500 monkey. Needed to get away from all that, and he did, and he just has proven once again. I heard an announcer, not yesterday, but sometime maybe last year, refer to him as having a refinery in the back of the car. And it looks like he did again. I mean, that ended up being a pretty interesting fuel strategy at the end. And I think Herta might have mounted a charge in terms of fuel, but his rears went away, and so that kind of ended that one, which was too bad. And at least though, Herta was able to hold off the charge that he was receiving.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
I
think it was a good drive for Herta.
It was
seconds, good for the championship points. He won the pole, but occasionally Herta tends to get excited. I think, if that's the best way to describe it, when he gets behind and tries too hard to make up and has some incidents.
Long Beach, Nashville.
I think it displayed some maturity for him. He realized what he could do with his tires and did it. He knew he couldn't catch Dixon and focused on holding off and taking second place instead of crashing out.
I still need to find out more about this reference to a balaclava failure for Colton. Like, apparently something happened. He got hair coming across his face.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got to find that out. Where did I see it? I guess I saw it online somewhere today.
Yeah.
I'll check that.
Well, it's amazing to me that there had been 9 consecutive pole winners going into Toronto,
and they changed it.
But Dixon started second. So look at that amazing broad talent that there exists in IndyCar again. Between them, I wouldn't be surprised. Dixon very easily could string together 2 or 3 more wins and be in the hunt for the championship when it comes down to Laguna.
Sure.
He's that good and everything. And if that charge is mounting and and the Palou thing gets worse, I think far more focus is going to be on Dixon, or obviously Ericsson. Ericsson's kind of lost in the picture, but by the way, he is the point leader. And he's
had a pretty good year.
And with his F1 experience, I think he's certainly in the Ganassi car, has to be considered a co-favorite to win the championship this year. And he seems to be enjoying it thoroughly. And I think some other F1 drivers may be looking at that as a landing point fairly soon too. Grosjean again proving it, Rossi proving it as well. Another pleasing thing, let's move on to, since we're talking about Rosenquist, a very great run for Felix, his best of the year, gets a podium, third place, not too far from getting taking Herta for second place.
Yeah.
So, I think that
one more
improved his
lap and he
stock.
would have had him.
Yeah. And Herta,
And
Herta
that adds
admitted that.
another intrigue to the McLaren saga and everything. What do they do with Felix Rosenquist?
well, another pleasant change at this last weekend was Graham Rahal.
I was going to say, isn't that neat?
Yeah, I mean, the way that team has turned things around, and we'll see if that sticks. We'll see if they're able to do that moving forward. So Iowa's next weekend, and Graham's always pretty good on the ovals. You know, he's a good on the ovals. So we'll see.
You think the collar might be getting a little tighter around Jack Harvey's neck, though, with Lundgaard running as well as he has, basically the third car. I'd have to say it's a bit of a disappointment, though, how pleased the sponsor is, because they're doing all those ads to see him run toward the back of the field. But, you know, Graham now proved it could be done, and Christian's proven it can be done.
Yeah.
It's not happening with Jack Harvey, and he's certainly talented enough.
Yeah.
What's
all
go ahead.
a matter of setups, and it's so complex as setups are today that, you know, something just slightly different that works very well for one driver on the same team just might not work at all for another driver and fit their particular style. So I'm sure it's something like that with Harvey.
Well, Graham Rahal also mentioned Felix again. He said he definitely deserves to be an IndyCar, and we wish we had a spot for him. So that was a glowing endorsement for him as well.
Well, Denny, what did you think of the Rossi accident? Or Bob, either one.
Say that again.
The Rossi accident where he looked like he got pushed.
Yeah.
And I was looking at a couple onboards, and you can't tell, but you can see not Rossi. Help me here, Rosenquist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I don't know. I was having one of those old man's things. On one onboard, you can see him kick the wheel to the left. Now, he may have been fighting the fact that the back end's coming loose,
right?
And the officials finally decided there was nothing there. But
right.
That's an interest. I'd like to hear what Landike and the gang were actually thinking of when they looked at that whole thing, because it took a while for him to come back with a result. Yeah.
You mentioned Rossi as well in his crash, and it's interesting to me that it seems he lost the steering wheel again.
Yeah, he sure did.
And that's two weekends in a row that he's lost the steering wheel. That's complicated, you know, the crash.
Yeah.
Last time he got through it, but put his teammate out, but he definitely lost the steering wheel, and he did again this week, which made the crash much more severe.
Yep.
So I thought that was, I don't know if there's something going on there with the wheel. They're all custom fit, or just, you know, just happened. Just coincidence.
I thought he gave a great line to one of the television reporters when he was asked that question, you know, what's going on with your wheel here? What are you going to do? And his answer was, you have any suggestions?
Yes, I caught that. That was to Hinchcliffe, I believe.
Right.
All right, let's reverse that. Had that been asked by Bobby Unser and he said that, what response to Bobby Unser, what would Uncle Bobby have said to that, Paul?
I think Bobby would probably have been more delving, more of an investigative reporter and something like that before he used language that we can't use here.
So, but that was a slight setback to Rossi's championship hopes.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
because they had some pretty good momentum going.
Right.
But, you know, at Iowa, the people that run good on ovals can pick up some points.
Yeah.
And, I'm glad Iowa's back. I'm glad it's going in a doubleheader, and I think it's absolutely brilliant that they have 2 concerts with Blake Shelton
Yeah.
and Gwen Stefani. I almost want to fly from Redondo in to see that and everything.
Right.
But I think that's brilliant. I think it'll have a heck of a crowd, and I'm glad Iowa, they recognize the importance of having that track on the schedule and everything.
And it creates some really great races. Yeah, the one I remember most was when Ryan Hunter-Reay stopped for new tires when everybody else didn't, went to the back of the field and drove right to the lead and won it. That was very cool.
Right. Yeah.
And it's neat to hear Ryan Hunter-Reay's name coming up again too as a possible suitor, because they need him in the series too, and hopefully that happens next year. Well, Bob, I don't want to keep you on this any longer. Here I'm wearing this shirt so you can talk about your book and Troy Ruttman. Some people actually say Troy Ruttman was the finest race car driver ever. I've heard that mentioned.
Well, I think
I'm not necessarily in that camp, but
he was definitely very talented, very talented. AJ Watson, who has a lot of credibility, has said, and you probably heard it several times yourself, that the 3 best drivers he personally ever saw at Indianapolis was in no particular order: Bill Vukovich, Parnelli Jones, and Troy Ruttman. And so they, you know, AJ Watson, of all people, ranks Troy Ruttman right up there with the best that he'd ever seen in Indianapolis. And I remember Robin Miller telling us he did a story about the best sprint car drivers he ever saw, and put Pancho Carter at number 1 on the ones that he saw. And at the next race, he ran into Foyt, and Foyt had heard this. I think this is when Robin was probably doing wind tunnel with Dave Despain, and Foyt told him that Pancho Carter wouldn't be a pimple on what on Troy Ruttman. So AJ Foyt had a lot of respect and understanding of how talented Troy Ruttman was in sprint cars. So I think all around he was probably an excellent driver.
Take us back to 1949, Bob, when he comes to Indy as a rookie, and how he was able to hide the fact that he was 19 when you had to be 21. Did his size make him seem older or something?
Yeah.
What was the behind the scenes stories, and how well did he do in those first 3 years at Indy as a talented sprint car driver, but not maybe having the best equipment at Indy?
Yeah, well, he was one of the most talked about drivers in the country during that era, leading up to the 1949 500, and that's how he got his ride. The car that he drove was actually the car that Maury Rose co-drove. Who was it he co-drove with? And not to win the 1941 500.
Floyd Davis.
So it was a pretty old car. And Troy had never been in a championship race until March. No, it was April before the 1949 500. And he ran that car at Arlington in Texas. He qualified at second quick, passed Johnny Parsons for the lead, and led 48 laps before something happened to the car. So again, that displays the talent that he had there. He qualified the old car, I think 12th. It fell out, partway through the race, but he obviously, was very, very good with that car from the beginning. But he started racing when he was underage. And to make a long story short, his mother had changed his birth certificate from 1930 to 1927. And not sure how she did that and got away with it. That was before photoshopping and all those types of things, or even whiteouts. I'm not sure how she did, but yeah, he raced her and started racing in Indy when he was 19.
How big was he at 19?
How
I
what?
know they said he was 245 pounds when he won
Yeah.
Indy in
Yeah.
1952. Was he that heavy back
Yeah,
then?
he was about that size, and I think that's one thing that helped sell it. I always thought the funny story, though, was 1951, when he actually turned 21. He began to let people, and he had to change his driver's license and, update that, his insurance. Snappy Ford, who was the PR guy, and I don't know if he was still around. Paul, did you ever know Snappy?
No, I did not.
Okay, but he was pretty influential, one of the heavy hitters there at the Speedway. He did PR.
Mhm.
So Snappy asked each driver every year, hey, what do you want to do? Need it updated as far as your personal information. So he asked Troy that, and Troy said, well, you can actually get my age now as 21 instead of 24 as they thought it was. And Snappy kind of mumbled to himself, and he said 21, and just mumbled to himself, walked off, and ran into Troy's dad. And Snappy said, how old is your son? And Troy's dad said to Snappy, well, how old do you want him to be? We have a birth certificate that we can make him any age you want. But Snappy Ford and some of the other officials weren't too pleased with all that. And in fact, were talking about maybe banning him from that year's 500 or fining him. By that time, he was driving for J.C. Agajanian. Of course, Aggie had a lot of pull, with the AAA officials then at the Speedway, and they let him go ahead and run. But what he thought was kind of amusing really wasn't to a lot of the higher ups at the Speedway.
Well, Bob, was he good enough to make Indy in 48 or 47 as a driver?
He probably could have, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how did he, how would you rank 49, 50, and 51 as his best? And what, if you'd rank order those 3 years?
I think every year he fell out with mechanical problems, but I believe it was in 50, he qualified 7th. In 51, with Agajanian's car, which was a 3-year-old car at that point, he qualified 6th and fell out. So, I mean, he was definitely getting around the Speedway.
So either year,
well.
would they have considered him a threat to win the race in 50 or 51?
Well, in 50, he was setting some of the quickest times in practice. He had gotten the ride in the Bowl Seal Fast car, which, we know it later on as one of AJ Foyt's rides, and was doing very, very well with that. Something broke on the car and he crashed in practice, ended up in it split his helmet. So he ended up in the hospital with a concussion. The concussion procedures at that time being unlike they are today, he was able to let on like he was okay. In fact, the rumor is he did handstands at the hospital to give him to show he was in good shape and got him released. But the AAA officials weren't quite that impressed with handstands, I don't guess. And it was probably 10 days before he was able to get back on the track. I think he was, I said he qualified 7th, but he didn't, but he was the 7th fastest qualifier, later in the month.
So in 1952, he wins and becomes the youngest driver at age 22 to win Indy. Was he much of a pre-race favorite to win?
He was one of the favorites, yes.
You had Freddie Agabation on the pole with the Cummins diesel, and I don't think anyone thought the Cummins diesel would last.
Oh, no way it could have.
Very long. That was good theater.
Too heavy, way too heavy.
You had Chet Miller in the Novi on one of the later qualifying days, setting a true track record. And then your other driver that you have written about, Bill Vukovich, just really burst on the scene in that car that he had that year.
Yeah.
Why did Vuki, was there qualifying issues that caused him to start back where he did?
Well, no, the car just wasn't ready. See, they didn't start building that car until March, I think it was. And Jim Travers told me when they got to the track, and they got to the track, probably a week late, but they were still having to put brake lines on the car and those types of things. And it took them a while to get the car to handle like they could, or like it should. But when Vuki qualified, he set new 1 and 4 lap records.
And that's the Keck special.
Yeah.
I know in talking to Maury Rose Jr. on my Eddie Rickenbacker book, he really felt that his dad, had he not flipped, got upside down in 51 in the Keck car, might have very well been in that car. I know they had another Keck car too, but potentially that could have been Maury Rose's fourth win in that car too,
We never know.
I do too much of that, Paul, the speculation type of thing, which, but that to me is kind of a neat type of thing to think about. And I know Maury certainly thinks that's the case. But so then you had Vukovich, who would have been pre-race favorite in 52? Would have been Vukovich, Bob?
No, because again, this was a interesting car, but it was an unknown. The car was really an unknown, and Vukovich, as far as IndyCar, was very much an unknown at that time. So Troy might have been one of the favorites. It's his third year at Indy. Plus, he had Clay Smith as a mechanic in J.C. Agajanian's car. So
McGrath probably as well.
I think Walt Faulkner would probably been the favorite. He was teammate to Walt Faulkner that year in another Agajanian car. So I would guess that Walt Faulkner was probably one of the favorites anyway.
Well, he wins. Actually, Vukovich has a gentle crash when a steering pin or something breaks in his car on, was it lap 192, I believe.
Yes.
It grazes the wall, and then Ruttman goes on to win. Rahal is second, and he didn't really have a chance to celebrate his win too much. It kind of followed what happened to Lee Wallard. Lee Wallard won the 1951 Indy 500 and was severely burned at Reading 4 days later. In fact, Wallard had said in Victory Lane he's going to be the winningest driver ever. And I don't know if Lee ever raced again. I think he tried to run some laps at Indy and he didn't do it. But then that consecutive, it was running 15 mile an hour when he crashed.
Ruttman, you're talking about?
Yeah, we're talking Ruttman now. Would that have been
a
shock to the people in the grandstand that he got hurt as bad as he did?
Yeah, it was the pace lap. He was probably running 55, 60 miles an hour.
So it wasn't 15.
Something broke on the car, and Troy Ruttman always believed that, and it was a steering pin or a knuckle or something along that line. But this was the same car you see that Cecil Green was killed in at Winchester on what they call Black Sunday. And so they rebuilt the car, and Troy always thinks that was something that just got missed. They were doing some magna fluxing in those days, but it just might have been a minor crack, not detectable, and the stress of racing then opened it up. But he heard something snap and actually rolled over a chain link fence in the car. Just because he was so big and stuck so far out of the car landed on his arm. And it wasn't a simple break. It was pretty much a complicated break that took a year and a half or so to really heal properly.
Was there a chance he would run the 53 race?
If he'd have been ready,
Or,
And actually, Emmett Malloy, when he got back to California, insisted he should go to this orthopedic surgeon. But Troy didn't want to undo what the previous doctors has already done because he was afraid he would not heal in time then for the 53 race. So he forgone that. But regardless, he ended up missing it anyway, and ended up, what they did was broke everything, reset it, repinned it for his arm to finally heal up properly.
so, but he came back. I know in 57 he was strong. Really the front runner to win the pole. Had it not rained on his qualification attempt, he may have sat on the pole instead of Pat O'Connor. Sachs as a rookie starts in the middle of the front row.
Right.
Troy on the outside, but I think Troy Ruttman was the favorite to win the 57 race.
Yeah, there were several races before he retired that he led, and maybe very well could have won. He really felt that 1961 he had a better chance of winning than he did in 1952. He passed Foyt, the eventual winner of the 61 race. Late in the race, he passed Foyt for the lead, and something broke, something went wrong with the car. But he was one of those guys that could really almost like Graham Rahal. Graham Rahal never qualifies great, but always ends up racing really well. And Troy was not a bad qualifier, but he was a better racer than he was a qualifier.
Did you ever get to meet him or very much spend time with him, Paul?
No, I never did. And I would have liked to have done that because he is such a fascinating individual. Yeah.
How surprised were you that he retired in the 64 season, Bob, knowing your research on him and as young as he was still in 64?
Yeah.
Heck, there were people at his age just hoping to get to Indy
Yeah.
at that age.
Yeah, well, he'd been racing many years, and he was getting to the point where he wasn't necessarily getting the best rides. And he just felt like it was time. I think he crashed. I can't remember if he rolled at the car. I think he did at Trenton.
That was a frightening crash, apparently, from what I've read.
And then, he just spent so many years racing and lost so many people. He was very close to the Sachs, the Eddie Sachs McDonald race or crash in the 1964 race. So I think just all that, he was ready to retire and did.
Well, the 1952 race had just a stellar group of rookies. Art Cross finishes 5th and becomes the first rookie of the year. And it's growing in prestige over the years. Stark Wetzel, the local meat company, put some
Stark and Wetzel.
some money into it. Again, I keep telling how Eddie Sachs knew he was going to win in 57, as already knew how he was going to get all that free meat for a year because he had that tavern in Center Valley and he could feed them, and he was promoting. You're going to have everything you want for a year to eat and everything. Jimmy Bryan finished 6th. Jimmy Reese finished 7th. Jim Rigsby, who was really good and lost his life, unfortunately, at Dayton later that year, finished 12th. Eddie Johnson was a pretty good veteran driver, finished 16th. Bob Swikert, who wins the 55 Indy, was 26th. And another person with a lot of misfortune, Bob Scott, finished 29th. You remember that story, either one of you, what happened to Bob Scott when they were going to qualify that year at Indy and he misses the race?
No.
You're going to have to run with it there, Denny.
Oh, it's good because this kind of shows the bad fortune that happened to Bob Scott. He was on the run, I believe it was Bob Swikert, and he were good friends, and he had 3 laps that were very good, and Swikert did this, meaning as he started the 4th lap, and Scott thought he had finished the run and slowed down. He realized he had only gotten 3, and he came around with that pulled down the average and he missed making what would have been comfortably making the race. And then later that year at Darlington, he gets killed, and it
Yeah.
was kind of a not that bad
I,
looking accident, but there was a pile of concrete rubbish or something that had been set aside, and he just happened to land on top of that or something.
yeah, I thought you said 1952. Of course, that didn't happen in 1952. It was 53 or 54.
Yeah, he was a rookie in 52. I
Yeah,
remember.
okay.
But that was a heck of a class. But the big name, Paul, I'm gonna direct this to you, was Alberto Ascari came
Yeah.
to Indy in a Ferrari.
Yep.
It really created a buzz. He only lasted 40 laps or 41 laps and finished 31st. But what was the buzz like from then? And then I'm segueing into that possible rumor that Ferrari might one day be the third manufacturer, which I think would create a bigger buzz than any other engine company coming to Indy.
Well, Ascari, you got to remember, he was a global guy.
Mhm.
I mean, you know, the coming out of that whole Formula One was really just getting underway at that time. But Ascari was internationally famous, which wasn't necessarily true of the Indy 500 winners in that day as much. I mean, the European side of it didn't really know about what was going on here until he came here.
Mhm.
And yeah, it wasn't the showing he would have liked, but and I would have liked Ferrari to gone better. I was really excited when I thought Ferrari was going to come into the Indy cars as a manufacturer some years ago, but maybe we'll get him eventually. But yeah, Ascari was huge.
Yeah, and his dad was quite good too, and he got killed in himself, Antonio
Mhm.
Ferrari. And if you've seen the movie Grand Prix with James Garner, one of the race cars goes tumbling into Monte Carlo Bay. Well, they stole that scene from what really happened. Ascari in 1955 crashes into Monaco Bay and darn near drowns, survives it, then gets killed 4 days later at Monza on just taking a practice drive. I don't even think he had a helmet on that time. Just doing a tragic end, but he did create a buzz. They had said that he was going to come back in 53 and it didn't materialize. I don't know quite what happened on that. Either one of you know why they didn't come back in 53?
No, not real. The Ferrari, what they found out was, the engine just didn't have it. There were actually 2-3 other Ferraris independently entered that year. I think Johnny Parsons was in one for a while,
Mhm.
but they just didn't. They couldn't match the torque coming off the corners like the Offie did. I mean, it just pumped out the power, and that's where back then, you went so slow through the corners, and then you really had to hammer it down those long straights. And the Offie really had the torque to do that, but with Ascari, I mean, everybody was amazed at how well he did with that Ferrari qualifying. At one time, it was the closest 4 laps in the history of the Speedway. I don't know if that's still the case today, but it was the closest 4 laps to speed, with each lap being close to the same in the history of the track. In fact, 2 of the laps were identical time on each 2 of the laps. So it says something about that he was getting the most out of that car. It says something about what caliber of a driver he was to do that. He won a lot of respect from the other drivers that year.
I know some of our viewers might say this, so we'll do a spoiler on this. And our Ziggy fans, George Snyder had 3 consecutive identical laps, and one was like 1/100th or slower or faster. That was an amazing run by, and I always thought Ziggy was much better than his career showed at Indy. His second year, he qualifies on the outside of the front row, and and he seemed content just to be Foyt's backup driver and just.
Yeah, that
Understood.
sentence right there, that really, in a lot of ways, describes who Ziggy was. I mean, he was, I'm here to help. If I can win, he's a great driver, but he was always very much a team player, and he always had this grin that I kind of like seeing him go down the pits. And
obviously, we will
Good
be
guy.
talking a lot more about George Snyder in the future, but we're glad to be able to talk about your driver. Now, Bob, you did a book on Vukovich. You did a book on Ruttman. Watson said there was one other that were the greatest three, Parnelli. Is that going to cattle prod you to do one on Parnelli now? So you have the trifecta, Watson.
Boisier's already done the
Oh, I know that. But,
ultimate Parnelli book. So
anyway, that's AJ Watson saying that. That's
Yeah.
almost about as good an endorsement as you can get. Well, next week, real interesting. We go to Iowa for a doubleheader, the only doubleheader they have this year. So as we look ahead, final thoughts on Toronto or looking ahead, Paul?
well, Toronto kind of mixed the game up for the championship. There were a lot of things that happened there. I mean, Herta went up 2 places, and now Dixon, has his macho back, and I think we're gonna see this as a pivotal moment in the championship season. And with the variety of stuff we have coming up, like Iowa, I think we're going to now see, forget that 9 consecutive pole positions or whatever. We're going to see a lot of different action from a lot of different people, and there's a lot of people out there who are pretty desperate to win. So I think it's going to be a great to the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree, Paul. One thing I might mention is just the crowds. The number of people. Road America was huge.
Yeah.
Toronto, I don't think it was like it was back in the 90s in the heyday, but certainly a better crowd than they'd had in some recent years. So it'd be great to see Iowa have a large turnout as well. And they're definitely promoting that race and trying to do things to draw the fans in. So it'd be nice to see that and to see IndyCar on a roll as far as building the number of fans that are attending the races.
Well, we will be back next week to tell what happened in both segments or races at Iowa and anything else that may transpire. So from Speedway Insiders Paul Page and Bob Gates, this is Denny Miller saying Godspeed, and we'll see you next week.